All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about verbs today and just getting started with verbs, getting started with the idea of verbs. Before we begin, we want to define what a verb is. A verb is a word that describes an action or state of being. So we have this sentence: we are studying Greek, right?
Right.
In this case, the verb are, is describing our state of being. We are studying Greek. Studying here is the action. So we have subject, verb, and object. We are studying Greek. Just a very basic sentence, and it's kind of telling us that we are continually studying Greek, just kind of the tense and what's going on here. But in our fun sentence here, the red fox jumped over the dog. So, again, what's our subject? Fox. Our object is dog. Preposition over, and our verb here is jumped. This is an action. We're being told what's happening with, or what's going on with the fox. And so we could, in English, we can change this verb. And so we could say the fox jumps over the dog. And what did I just do? What tense did I just change?
It's present.
Yeah, I changed it from a past tense verb, the fox jumped, to the fox jumps over the dog. So it's happening right now. Again, I could change it to say the fox will jump over the dog. What tense did I just change it to?
Future.
Future. Yeah, so English works in three basic tenses: past, present, and future. And Greek is going to have these three basic functions as well. They're going to have a little bit more. Well, I could even change the sentence from the fox will jump to the fox is jumping. It's now a state of jumping over the dog. And it's the current state. And so what we see in verbs in English and in Greek is that they use person. They use first, second, and third person. We see that a little more clearly, with the to-be verbs. I am here, you are here, we are here. Just kind of we see it more in the to-be verbs. We see that it has to agree. With action verbs, it's not as clearly seen. So if I were to say something like, the fox, let me see what's in it. Yeah, so if I have the fox are jumping over the dog, or over the dogs, we would look at this and we would say this is a bad sentence. We would say that the verb are does not agree with fox. So in English, our subject verb will agree with our subject noun. And here we see that this does not agree. It would be better if it was the fox is jumping over the dog or dogs, or to make it agree, we would have to change our noun. The foxes are jumping over the dogs. So the verb has to agree with the subject in both English and in Greek. And so English and Greek also uses the first, second, third person. So if I were to say a sentence, I am walking, so this is the state of being, walking to the store. This sentence, I am, They agree. They agree in number and in person. Otherwise, we are walking to the store. So we are walking. And so we have verbs agree in number and in person in both Greek and English. And so the three persons, as we've been looking at kind of the last few weeks in pronouns, is the first person is I or we. Second person is you in the singular, or y'all in the plural. The third person is he, she, it, or they. And I'm really only focusing on the nominative here. So I, we, you, y'all, he, she, it, they. And so we see that that English and Greek both have the three persons. And so in Greek, the verb has to agree with the noun in number and in person. So if our noun is plural, our verb has to be plural. If our noun is plural in second person, our verb has to be plural second person plural. And we'll kind of look at what that is. So time is very important as far as verbs go. It tells us something what's going on. So in English, we talk in the past and in the present and in the future. And this is the difference between I walked, I was walking, and in the present, I walk, or I am walking, and then in the future we have I will walk, or I will be walking. There is differences between these 6 examples. So on the top here, I walked, I walk, I will walk. These are all considered complete verbs. I'll just write complete here because it doesn't tell you much more than that. It's just very clear. These ones, these 3 on the bottom, with the to be verb added, these are considered continuous. I was walking, I am walking, and I will be walking. So there's an idea that they're continuous. And Greek, the major tenses we'll be covering over the course of the next few weeks is the present, is the future, is the aorist tense, and the perfect tense. And I'll kind of write that out for you, kind of what to expect here. So if we can imagine that the perfect tense, we'll just write this out, perfect, and then a nice line here, and we'll go aorist, which is the complete, versus the imperfect. We'll talk about these categories later. The present, and then the future. These are the basic tenses of Greek. So in the perfect, it happened in the distant past, and it has implications for the present. The aorist is a simple, defined point in time. It happened, I walked to the store. The imperfect happened in the past, and it has implications to the distant present, or in the past. So this one would be, I walked to the store, I was walking. Again, in the present, we have I walk or I am walking. And so we can see that it has implications into the future. And then I will walk, just a simple point in time, versus I will be walking. So these are kind of an overview of how these tenses are going to be working and the importance of them. We don't need to worry about these yet, but this is what we'll get into in the next couple of weeks as we kind of focus on things. So this is kind of what we would expect with time and verbs. The next thing to kind of think about is the aspect. And verbal aspect is in general the portrayal of the action or state as to its progress, result, or simple occurrence. So, Tony, I'm going to use you as an example. Well, actually, before I get to aspect, I want to talk about voice. We have an active and a passive voice in English. We mostly just talk in the active voice, whereas Greek has a third voice, which is called the middle voice. So the important thing about voice is that in the active voice, Tony hit the ball. So Tony is the one doing the verb. Tony hit the verb, hit the ball. In the passive, Tony was hit by the ball. So in this case, Tony is the one receiving the verb, and he's the subject. Subject, object. So the object is doing the verb, the subject is receiving the action of the verb. Here, the subject is doing the action of the verb. And then Greek has the third voice called the middle voice. This one's a little weird. English doesn't really use it, but we can consider it as being kind of reflexive. Tony hit the ball to himself. So in this case, Tony is doing the verb for his own benefit. So in this case, let's just get rid of these examples here. And we'll talk more about this later. So if we can imagine Tony here, nice little stick figure. Tony, in the active voice, is doing the action of the verb. So we'll just go action. So in the active, Tony is doing the action of the verb. In the passive, nice little stick figure here again, Tony is receiving the action of the verb. And then in the reflexive, or in the middle, Tony is doing the action of the verb for himself. We'll talk more about this in the next few weeks. This is just basically how these three voices are going to be working. And it's very important to know how they're going to be working. So this nice little figure here just shows you how the voice is acting. So now we can talk about aspect. So aspect is the verbal aspect as in general, the portrayal of the action or state as to its progress, results, or simple occurrence. So again, we'll look at the fox jumped over the dog. And so the aspect is going to be the verb, and we can change the verb, which we've already done, and we can see how the aspect changes, how the fox in relation to the dog is going to be changing. And and so kind of what we see here, or if we were to say the fox was jumping over the dog, we would see kind of a past tense continual. The fox is jumping over the dog would be a present tense continual. So this is kind of the idea of aspect. In both English and in Greek, there's kind of this tension between aspect and time. Sometimes we don't always see it. Greek kind of has a more of an emphasis on the aspect and time ratio. Before we get there, we also want to talk about mood. Mood is the general, not feeling, but aspect of the verb. So we typically talk and speak in the indicative. We ask questions in the indicative. I am going to the store is an indicative mood. Or I could say, I might go to the store. I might go to the store. So this is a subjunctive mood. It's a mood of possibility. I could go, I couldn't go. I am going to the store is the mood of indicative. It's the mood of reality. So indicative mood. And so a large percentage of our communication is in the indicative mood. I am doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And so the indicative mood is what we're going to be focusing on for the remainder of our time. So the indicative mood is the mood of reality. It's what we talk in. So if I were to say, Tony, go to the store, that's a mood of imperative. I'm telling you to do something. A participle is another mood. These are all moods in Greek. The optative, if the subjunctive is the mood of possibility, the optative is the mood of it's a step further from possibility. It's hypothetical. You'll encounter that second semester, so don't worry about learning that now. But when we are looking at Greek verbs, there are three things that we should look at. The first is the stem. As we've seen with noun, stem is the piece of the word that carries the basic meaning. So in this case, lu, which is the stem, in its basic sense means to destroy, or to lose, or to untie. So the stem carries the meaning of the word. We're going to talk about this more later, but we also have connecting vowels. So in this case, I'm going to give it an omicron for the connecting vowel. So I'll write down here connecting vowel. So in this case, we have omicron as our connecting vowel. This is what's going to connect our stem to our personal ending, which we're going to see here shortly. So we have lu-o, but now we need a case or a personal ending. As we've seen, the verbs can take first, second, or third person singular or plural. And so the person endings will tell us what person that is. We're not going to focus too much on that tonight, but this is just going to be kind of the key components to understanding this. We're going to have min as our personal ending. So I'm going to write personal ending. And so these are kind of the idea. This is the key parts to these verbs. So parsing verbs is a little bit more complex than nouns. Nouns we've seen, graphone is genitive plural feminine from graphe, meaning of words, right? So parsing verbs are going to be a little bit different. We start with the most important information, which is the tense. So past, or in this case, we'll just go present, and then we have to parse voice, which is going to be active, middle, or passive. We're going to talk more about that later, but for now we're just going to go active. So I'm parsing this word luomen for you. Then we parse mood. And luomen, I gave you an indicative verb to start off with, so it's going to be indicative. Again, every single verb that you'll be parsing for the remainder of this course are going to be indicative verbs. Now, so we've gotten present, active, indicative. Now we have to parse person, knowing that the min is a first person personal ending. So person is going to be first person, and then min is also a plural ending. Tense, voice, mood, person, number. And this is going to be plural. Now, we're still not done yet. We're done with most of our work. Now, we need to know the lexical form, like what we've done with verbs or nouns. We need the lexical form, which is going to be luo, and then the inflected meaning, as we've seen with nouns, is going to be what the word means in its current form. So luomen means we destroy, as it is an active verb. And so when you're parsing or when you're working with any of these, that's what you're looking for parsing. And as far as everything that we've talked about today, we're going to slowly unpack over the course of the next few weeks, kind of get our bearings with what's going on here. But this is just a basic lesson of verbs.